Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If this is your first time here, tuning in, this is Reyes Ramirez with Fresh Arts. I'm the Programs Outreach Coordinator. Um, and Fresh Arts is a nonprofit arts organization that provides resources, amongst many other things, to artists, to creatives, primarily within the Houston area where we are based. But we also provide digital resources such as this video series that extends beyond our reach in Houston. And so this video series has been curated and developed to provide information and any other resource we think creatives and artists in Houston and abroad can hopefully glean something from. And we also just want to provide resources in general to help artists understand and navigate the situation and the COVID-19 crisis and what they can do to either work on their art, to get through the basic necessities during these trying times. And so today we have a really great lineup of guests to discuss and to provide updates of what organizations are doing, particularly ones that serve creatives and artists in different fields. So today we have three great guests. First, we have Lauren Hainley with Houston Arts Alliance, particularly the Disaster Resilience for Artists and Nonprofits program. Then we have Deidre Thomas, who is with Houston Arts Alliance as well. She is the grants director. And finally, we have Mollie Miller, who is with DanceSource, the executive director of DanceSource. So we're just kind of pretty much go right into it. Question is obviously just for anyone who maybe doesn't know your organization. If they don't, this would be a good chance to kind of introduce what your organization does, and particularly maybe your program. So the question is, can you perhaps introduce the organization, the program that you work with, and generally what it does, maybe in normal circumstances, give maybe an overview of all that. So Deidre, if you could start off, please.
Thanks, Reyes. Hi, everyone. Hope everybody is safe and well and healthy. So I am the grants director for the Houston Arts Alliance, and we partner with the City of Houston to administer the hotel occupancy tax dollars that are dollars dedicated to funding arts and cultural experiences for residents and visitors. And I work closely with my partner, Lauren Hainley, who has spearheaded a lot of our disaster recovery response. And so we've been working together closely on those initiatives and maintaining all of the grant programs.
I'm sorry, Deidre, just in case for those who don't know, could you explain a little bit just about the HOT funds?
Yeah, so the HOT funds are a state mandate. HOT stands for Hotel Occupancy Tax. And so when someone books a hotel room, they pay a tax, and a percentage of that tax is allocated to the arts. And the city is allowed to use 19.3% of that tax revenue in order to support arts and culture in the city, and the City of Houston uses the full 19.3%. And so that's roughly $12 million or $11 million that goes out to arts and cultural organizations on an annual basis. So from your largest institutions to your smallest, and then also to individual artists.
Thank you. Lauren, please, same question, if you could introduce perhaps what you particularly do within Houston Arts Alliance and what maybe you normally do.
Sure. So my title is Program Manager of Disaster Services for the Houston Arts Alliance. After Hurricane Harvey affected our sector so much, we as a sector knew that we needed to have a plan for the next disaster. So what I do, or have been doing over the last year and a half, is creating a plan that integrates the arts into the existing emergency management and disaster systems that exist. So when COVID-19 hit, I just sort of activated a bunch of relationships that I've created and started creating resources to send out to the field, and am leading the organization through our response to the disaster.
Thank you. And then Mollie, same question, please, if you could kind of give a summary, a breakdown of what DanceSource does and its usual practice and what the organization usually does.
Yeah, absolutely. So DanceSource Houston is a dance-focused service organization, and our mission is to empower the diverse individuals and organizations working in the field of dance throughout the greater Houston region by means of advocacy, inclusive community engagement, and services. So in normal times, that looks like providing performance platforms for dance makers, providing monthly injury clinics for dancers and teachers, providing some funding support for both individual artists and organizations, as well as gathering information about auditions and jobs and all sorts of opportunities, and gathering that and pushing that information out. And so right now, during this time, we are still gathering lots of information, but it's very different information than what we're used to gathering. So along with Fresh Arts and Houston Arts Alliance, trying to pull together the resources that are relevant right now to all individuals, including the artists within our community.
Thank you all for those summaries. I know your organizations do a lot of work, a lot of great work, and so we're going to get into kind of fleshing that out with these questions and in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. So the follow-up question is: the current COVID-19 crisis is unprecedented in its scope and its effects. Though Houston has dealt with hurricanes and floods, what makes this disaster so different? And what factors has Houston Arts Alliance and DanceSource been taking into account in helping to address this crisis? So Deidre, if you want to start off answering that question.
I think with this crisis is or what makes this one so different is the uncertainty. And there isn't like a definitive amount of time that we anticipate the social distancing and the quarantining to go on, where people can go back to their regular business and operating in a regular manner. And so information is changing on a daily basis, and we can only plan out as far as, the next update from our city and public officials and our federal government. And so that makes it difficult for anyone to respond in a substantial manner without fully understanding the scale of which the way in which COVID will kind of take place now and then in the future. What was the other question?
Lauren, please. In regards to what perhaps what you oversee within Houston Arts Alliance, what have you and your team been taking into account in helping to address this crisis?
Okay. So, as I said, information changes on a daily basis, and a lot of the since we are giving public dollars that are intended for to support tourism to the industry, obviously COVID has greatly impacted that, and then arts is naturally art. It makes people gather and come together. And so all of that has halted entirely. And so what we're really focused on is helping people navigate their obligations in terms of their grants, and to kind of plan out for to postpone or reschedule and think through how they can move forward in the future with their projects and programs. And consider alternatives. So we really want people, if they can, to put their events online, and to allow the public to enjoy arts and cultural experiences in the digital realm where it's safe for them to participate and engage with the artwork. And so just helping them to consider alternatives and then answering questions in terms of like what happens to my grant or what options are available to me.
Thank you. Lauren, I'll go ahead and ask again, just in case anyone has just started tuning in. What factors make this crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, different than what Houston has dealt with before in terms of disasters?
So I think there's a number of things. I mean, I think the first thing is that it's invisible, right? And the psychological toll of fighting an invisible villain is huge, right? None of us can see if we have it, and you never know if it's coming and when it's coming. The other thing is that we're not the only sector that's affected. And with Hurricane Harvey and other emergencies, we have also not been the only sector affected. But the economic downturn that is coming with the disaster, with the COVID, is creating a problem for our organizations, not just for not just in attendance, but also in donations. So you're seeing a lot of we're having to fight on both fronts, and it's hard. It's difficult.
And then the second part of that question is, what factors perhaps are you now taking into consideration in helping to address this crisis?
Sure. One of the things we never imagined we would have to do at Houston Arts Alliance in the Disaster Services Program is human services. It never crossed our mind that there would be artists who would need help paying rent and paying their power and getting food. And so that's a way that we have shifted our priorities toward how do we provide those basic needs to the people who do the work that make art in our communities. And that's where the majority of our time has been spent. The other thing is that we are working really hard to try and understand exactly how the new bill that came out of Congress affects our artists and our arts organizations so that we can share that information. I don't think any of us ever imagined reading congressional legislation.
Oh, absolutely. I know what you mean. Mollie, same question. The first part being, you can perhaps share your expertise with dancers and your experience within that creative sector. But the idea of what makes this disaster so different from what we've dealt with in the past.
Yeah. So definitely seconding what both Deidre and Lauren expressed. And specifically the point that we are not the only ones experiencing this, and that it's not like with Hurricane Harvey. There were tons of people impacted, but it was very specific parts of town, different areas, and then there were whole other communities who weren't affected in the same way. So locally, there was some capacity for people, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, to direct resources and time to be able to support. And then also folks from across the country who were, in our National Dance Service Organization network, and just across the dance community that reached out to try to, send dance studios resources, costumes, shoes, all sorts of different things, and as well as money. And so right now we're all working maxed out of our, emotional capacity, mental capacity, financial capacity. And so nobody's really able to do that at the moment, because we're all trying to serve our own communities, because nobody is untouched by this.
And then to follow up with that question, what factors has DanceSource been taking into account in helping to address this crisis?
So again, the one thing that we found after Hurricane Harvey was that people, they just wanted to be checked on, and they wanted to have an opportunity to share how they're feeling, what they're questioning, what they know and what they don't know at this point. And so that's something that we've been trying to be diligent about, checking in on our membership, checking in on the larger dance community, so that while we don't have the resources or all of the information to address all of those concerns and questions and needs, we do want to make sure that people feel supported and held in this time of uncertainty, even if we don't have what they need, just to let them know that there are people out there that care and that want to help figure out how to move dance forward into whatever the new future is, so that we can all rebuild into whatever our new normal is.
I'm sorry. Someone told me recently, I was talking about how I feel like I'm emptying the ocean with a bucket and it's still raining. And she just looked at me and she said, "But you know, you're not the only one with a bucket, right?" And like, that's the thing that I always try to hold on to as we're working. It's to remember Mollie's got a bucket and Deidre's got a bucket and Reyes has a bucket, and we're all working together to try and help everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this next question can probably play into that. And I ask this question because a lot of these organizations, agencies, resources, they have people behind them who are dealing with this crisis in their own way, with their own issues or with their own strengths, with their own capabilities. And so to start off, Deidre, if you could answer the following question, how has the COVID-19 crisis impacted your part of Houston Arts Alliance? And in what ways has Houston Arts Alliance, the grants department, had to pause or change or adapt their usual practices, or perhaps the way to collect information, or perhaps like an adaptation of outcomes?
Mm-hmm. So I think what a lot of grant makers are, considering at this point in time with COVID is how to kind of relax expectations and help guide people through COVID and figuring out what to do with their grants. And so we've had to, essentially turn what used to be a very like in-person experience. We used to have a lot of one-on-one meetings into the digital realm. And so we're working with grantees online, and we're also working as a team online. And we had to make that more efficient and do it very quickly, because as soon as the rodeo canceled, that was the major that was like the pivotal point where everything kind of transitioned. And there were a lot of questions coming from grantees and potential applicants. And I think just kind of quickly adapting and shaping our practices around the social distancing and having to work from home was the major change. But I think our primary job and responsibility is being consistent and being calm and being responsive and helping people and guiding them through this time. So our business hasn't really changed much. It's just the format has changed. We're wanting to, continue to push forward and think of the impacts of COVID, not only on like what's currently happening, but, in future grant cycles, and how we can be a little bit more flexible and agile when it comes to the way we do our work and the way that others do work.
Thank you. Lauren, likewise, in regards to particularly in your practice or in your part of Houston Arts Alliance, how has the COVID-19 impacted what you do, and in what ways is your part of Houston Arts Alliance having to adapt or change either the research practices or maybe your outcomes?
So we really went from being a one-person shop to almost everyone in the organization is working together on my program to try and get things, resources, and to get to try and work together to get things. So that's one of the biggest things, is that we've really broken down the walls that there used to be between our different departments, so that I'm working with finance and with fundraising and with Deidre in ways that we never would have done before. And then also we have a weekly call with art service organizations in the city of Houston, like Mollie, like Fresh Arts, where we talk together about what's happening in the city, so that we can make sure that we're all responding the same way and we're all sort of coordinating with each other. And like Deidre said, the move to remote work is complicated and it's difficult. And there are things that you don't think of ahead of time that we have had to sort of navigate. How many people can be in a Zoom meeting? And, what happens when the Zoom fails or someone else logs in? And so those have been changes in the way that we do our work. We also, as an organization, have started just like checking in with our employees a lot more often and a lot more outwardly. So just like making phone calls and making sure everybody's okay in their own processes. And then we have like a weekly phone call every week to just talk about good stuff that happened, so that we can stay in it and stay okay.
Thank you. And then Mollie, again, same question. How has the COVID-19 crisis particularly affected the DanceSource team? And in what ways is DanceSource having to change, adapt maybe the organization's approach to its constituents? And have y'all changed outcomes? Please.
Yeah, so in the next few months, we have multiple performances and events that were scheduled that we are, having to make decisions about and figuring out what that means for the organization financially, and what's possible to be moved to a virtual format, and what's the most helpful outcome for the artists who are supposed to be involved in that. So obviously navigating that whole technological end of things. And we have always, done a lot of communication with our members that isn't face to face, but now that everything is over a Zoom meeting or over a phone call, it definitely makes those interactions even more important. In terms of the DanceSource team, we were sort of in the habit already of not always being together in the same room. And so that shift wasn't entirely dramatic for us, but we certainly miss our weekly in-person staff meetings. Though we've transitioned those obviously to phone calls and video chats. But for us, we feel sort of largely in question mode about a lot of our programs that do require folks to be able to gather and share space. So there's a lot that we're questioning right now for the rest of our season programmatically.
Thank you. Again, I asked that question because, again, these agencies, organizations, maybe places or resources that you've been used to having, again, the dynamics have shifted immensely. And so there are faces, there are people with lives behind these resources, behind these agencies, behind these organizations. And so just wanted to check in kind of personally even with that. And so thank you. Thank you all for that, for those answers. So for this next question, Deidre and Lauren, feel free to maybe tag team on this question because, as you've said, you've been working closely together. So what are some initiatives, programs, or resources that Houston Arts Alliance is working on to address this crisis?
Okay, I'll take it. So we have put together, we already had a website that is ready.haatx.com. And we've created a page on that website that is the COVID-19 resource page. It's ready.haatx.com/COVID-19. And there you can find a list of curated resources. We have read every single one of them and chosen them for you and put them there. We also do a weekly newsletter where we give out those resources in the newsletter and any other things. We have, there it is. We have, just yesterday, we put together frequently asked questions about the new SBA loans, Small Business Association. And then something that I am proud to announce today, right here, is that we are starting a fund for artists and arts administrators. It's an arts relief fund. And if you go to ready.haatx.com and click on the COVID-19 link, it will take you to where you can both donate to the fund and apply to the fund. And we are very excited to be doing this in partnership with 13 other organizations, Fresh Arts, DanceSource, the Mayor's Office of Cultural, the City of Houston Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, the Museum District, the Theater District, the Fifth Ward Cultural Center, Midtown, East End. I know I forgot someone, and I'm sorry if I forgot you. I should have had a list. But yeah, so those are our big initiatives. We are also trying to figure out how to make things as easy as possible. So, what are the solutions that we can create in our system that make it easier for you all as artists and arts organizations to access these funds? And we know at HAA that this is a national problem, and the government is the only thing big enough to fix this huge problem. And so how can we connect you with those funds? Because we will never be able to raise enough to make you whole, but we can help you bridge the gap, and we can help you figure out how to get them to help you.
Thank you. Deidre, did you want to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, I'll just add that grant. So again, the hotel occupancy tax is a very specific funding source, and it's meant to support tourism to the region through arts and culture. And so we're looking at one of our programs and trying and thinking through what does it look like in this time of social distancing? How do we adapt to what we're kind of experiencing, and how can we keep artists working? So we're looking at an opportunity to potentially put out there that kind of transitions some of the programming to the digital realm.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Mollie, same question. What are some initiatives, programs, or resources that DanceSource is working on to address this crisis?
Yeah, so early on, once we realized that this was going to be a longer term event than what it may have seemed like early on, we made the decision to move over the remaining amount that we had available in a program called the Dancer Fund, which essentially provided matching funds to freelance dancers for stipends that they receive for project-based work. So knowing that there were not going to be any additional performances likely happening before the end of May or June, we wanted to go ahead and move the funds that we still had in that program right out the door. So with the remaining amount there and a very short-term Facebook fundraiser that we administered, we have just under $14,000 that we'll be pushing out this week through a program called the Houston Dance Relief Fund. We opened applications up a week ago and quickly maxed out those funds. So we will be distributing small $200 stipends for dance workers who've been impacted over the past few weeks and expect to be impacted for the weeks to come, to provide some immediate, quick turnaround relief to support purchases like groceries and healthcare expenses in the short term, as we all wait for the actionable items that will be provided by the federal government.
Thank you. So kind of going forward in regards to practices or best practices or kind of part of the adaptation to the crisis, what technologies, softwares, platforms are y'all leveraging to present information to the community or recommending? So I can start off with Deidre, perhaps maybe going into with grantees or how like artists can move forward, what softwares, technologies, or what have you, what would you recommend, or perhaps a resource you can guide people to?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of information that's been compiled on how to take programs digital has been done by our disaster services team, and they've provided links to resources, and those include Instagram Live, Facebook Watch Party, Zoom. And then there are other, I think, programs. Creative Capital has a lot of good resources as well, and examples of projects that are existing online. And so those are different ways. I've seen some grantees take digital photos and create virtual tours of their exhibitions. So I think there's a lot out there, and there's a lot of resource sharing among all arts and cultural organizations. And so just kind of going to our website and Fresh Arts website, because you all did a video series and provided a lot of information, and as well as other service organizations like DanceSource.
And then kind of going a little bit deeper into that, and kind of formulating or opening up the avenues in which grantees, artists can present their projects. What were some conversations or ways, what limitations you're working with in terms of like, oh, perhaps in the past this wouldn't happen, but with this context, it perhaps is the only way.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. In terms of conversations of opening up those avenues of digital platforms, having grantees perhaps thinking of ways to shift their projects online, accessibility. My question is, what did y'all take into account in terms of what artists have access to, what they don't have access to? In terms of like what.
I think we're still learning,
Sorry,
right? Oh, it's all kind of new territory, and so we're kind of learning together. There have been artists who've been practicing in the digital realm for a long time, and sometimes, they're not even, grants have not been made accessible to them, and I think there's a lot of learning that we can do from those artists who are already practicing in that realm. But honestly, I just think that we're kind of learning in the space together right now. And what I'm really kind of excited about is the innovation that will come out of everything that's taking place, and the way we transform the way we think about arts and cultural experiences and how people gather.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that because again, everyone's still learning, like in terms of like how to take advantage of these new avenues, and so. Thank you. It is certainly a learning curve and a learning process that we all have to adjust to. Lauren, same question. What technology, softwares, platforms is your part of HA in leveraging to present information to the community, and perhaps any recommendations or any success that you've seen just out and about?
I don't have much to add beyond what Deidre said. I mean, internal to the organization, I think I live on Zoom. I'm almost positive. But externally, we really utilize our website and Facebook and Instagram. And we've had to adjust, to try and make sure we know how to prioritize information, like what information is social media information versus what information is an email information, and trying to make those decisions with very little time. I think there's a lot of really great articles that have come out in the Houston Chronicle and the Houston Press and Houstonia of things that people are doing to put their work online. And we can share all of those for you guys. But I don't have much to add beyond what Deidre said.
So then could you perhaps maybe elucidate a little bit on the logic? Because I've been running into that same issue of like, I want to release information. I want people to know as much as possible, but it's also the opposite is also true, where if you just dump a lot of information out there or are in one place, people become overwhelmed. It's kind of been my experience with some of these government websites where it's like they are coming at it from like a very technical, like this is what the legalese is, this is what it has to be said. But when it comes to creatives in particular, that messaging to creatives, what is perhaps some of the logic or the way you're processing that information to make it accessible to our creatives?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the oldest technology that there is that I rely on my team to help me. So normally I won't, we'll make those decisions as a team. Like what needs to be in social media needs to go out right now, and as opposed to like what can wait till Friday. And then when you're distilling information, I mean, the best thing you can do, and I say this all the time about all sorts of things like grants or job applications or whatever it is send it to someone that has no idea what you're talking about. And so I have a couple of friends or my husband that I'll just send information to, and I'll be like, ask me all the questions. And so you don't have to do these things by yourself. Like that's the thing that we've really learned. And that's the technology, I guess you can call it, that we utilize the most, is to remember that that we're a community and we can all help each other.
Thank you. Yeah, again, with it, especially with the passage of a bill, when I'm even in other times, when do people read a bill, right? In the language of a bill. And so in sort of like, that processing information, how do you get that information out? And so I think that's also kind of what Deidre was talking about, the adaptation, or like having to kind of learn how do you present that information, especially when things are just happening day by day. So thank you. Mollie, same question. What technology, softwares, platforms is DanceSource leveraging, or which of those digital platforms does DanceSource recommend, perhaps to the creative community, but also dancers in particular?
So while I've, most days are spent primarily on Zoom, DanceSource has been using Google Hangout video, which I had never used before prior to this. But we have the Google Suite for nonprofits, so it's a free way to host video calls for us, and we so far, knock on wood, have successfully held some larger group meetings on that, and so I can say try that one out if you haven't already. And within the dance community, there have been there's been a really huge response to folks, finding new ways to offer class and connect with each other through movement, all from our living rooms. There have been a lot of folks who have been offering classes through Facebook Live and Instagram, as well as a number of studios who have both regular adult and children's classes who have moved their regularly scheduled programming onto another platform. I think primarily using Zoom, where the folks who are signed up just receive a link instead of showing up at the studio. And in terms of DanceSource, as we look forward, we have our annual festival that takes place every June, and we're now trying to figure out if we were to move that to a digital platform, what would be the best way to do that? What would be the best way to do that? And potentially find a way to, in some way, monetize that, and just what all of the options are. So we're definitely in research mode with that, and trying to. I feel fortunate that we have a little bit of time to see all of the other folks who are entering that territory now. And so we're watching for best practices on that. And there's also a really fantastic Facebook group that was started by someone and has grown for dance educators. And there's been a lot of sharing of resources of, how do you get the video and the music for there to not be a delay when you're teaching? Like what are all of the different things that you need to do so that it's as seamless on the other end for your students as and hopefully as seamless on the teacher's end as possible. And even, across the national dance service organizations, it's been really great to see how much folks are willing to share any and all resources and knowledge that they have. Nobody is holding on to any information that might be useful to somebody else in our community. And it's really, that's really encouraging that folks are as invested as possible in making sure that nobody is duplicating unnecessary work.
Absolutely. And kind of maybe expanding on that question, Deidre, if you could start off with this one. What are other organizations, programs, or resources that artists should be looking into in general for support? So I know you've already mentioned Creative Capital, but is there any other organizations, programs, resources that artists should be regularly checking up on to get some of this information?
I think that a lot of organizations who haven't already put out their kind of response to COVID, considering it took place only, 3 weeks ago, I think some of those things are still kind of being fleshed out, and people are figuring out what's the best way to respond, both in the immediate sense, because there are immediate needs, basic needs, rent, money for utilities, things of that nature. But then I also think that people are looking, grant makers and funders are looking at long-term, because we do know that the immediate impacts are just a portion of what we'll experience from COVID. There will be longer term implications, and I think there will be strategies developed around those, the longer term kind of outcomes. And so I think what's most readily available are relief funds and are and emergency assistance funds, and looking at public assistance and staying up to date on what federal assistance is available. And then I'm sure your organization, DanceSource, and then along with HAA, are developing a list of all of the things that become available as they become available. So it's kind of like everything is happening gradually, and as soon as information does become available, resources, there are lists that are being created, and just compiling that. And I think it's just important to, I think what might be difficult is navigating what's available to you and what might matter to you. So just talking with your friends, talking with providers to better understand what those resources mean for you.
And to kind of follow up on that, I think we have a really cool opportunity to be talking to you, Deidre, and in particular as someone who has a big hand in maybe drafting language or maybe processing these grant application language. In my experience, when I've been rechecking up on these grants, on these emergency funds, sometimes they'll change the way they do things, or maybe they'll change the language out of necessity, out of just having to adapt, because the situation, again, changes nearly every day. And so maybe could you expand upon maybe sometimes like the logic of a grant maker, what they have to consider in having maybe to shift language, and maybe having to make, let's say, something that maybe that was open to everyone, now they can only focus on a particular need?
Yeah, I think that resources will will look limited. And I think that's both from a public funding perspective and a private funder perspective, because the dollars are tied to different things. In our case, it's tied to HOT. In the public funders case, it might be tied to like stock markets, the private funders. And so we're looking at, I think, first our funding source and what are the parameters around that. In our case, it's tourism and hot dollars, which is about arts and cultural experiences for residents and visitors. And obviously in this current stage where we're social distancing and there are travel restrictions and people are having to stay at home, social gathering and arts and cultural experiences look different. But how do we keep a sector moving forward and continuing to be able to support their work? And so building out something that meets the criteria of our funding source, which are public dollars, and making sure that we are aligned with, the state laws and the mandate. And I think that's kind of what all funders have to consider is the funding source. And if there's any way to shift the way they grant and what they grant towards, based on the parameters with the funding that they receive. And I also think that people want to get money out into the hands of artists and arts organizations as quickly as possible. And so there may be different rules around approving grants. They may make exceptions in order to get money out faster. So there may be different ways in which the structure and awarding may shift slightly, so that there isn't a delay with funding.
Thank you. Yeah, I asked that question particularly because just kind of seeing some of the energy, or perhaps seeing some of the frustrations, maybe artists or people in general are just like, well, why don't you just shift money to do this or do that? And it's sort of like, well, it's a bit more complicated than that. It's these things have been established, and because everything is happening so fast, it may not be that easy to just say, oh, now we're going to fund this. And so I just wanted to kind of get someone who's working with that to kind of provide some clarity on that process. So thank you so much for that. Lauren, in terms of what the HAA Disaster Resilience for Artists and Nonprofits program, what are perhaps some things that you've worked on or things available online that would, even though this is entirely unprecedented and new, what are some things that can carry over with what y'all have presented before in terms of the information, the resources, what can apply now?
So I'm not going to talk about us. I'm going to talk about some other resources that exist out there that I think are really important for people to hear about. First of all, 211 is a phone number that you can call, and it connects you to the United Way. And the United Way has a giant database full of resources, full of all sorts of things that people can access to get help. And they can navigate for you and help you understand, do you need a lawyer? Do you need money? Do you need food? How do you and help you get through to those things? So my first answer would be, if you are struggling, if you are in an emergency right now, then you need to call 211. 211. After that, you can start thinking more like about art-specific things and about your organization. So like I said before, we're doing a lot of research into what's happening with the bill. And the Small Business Association, the Texas Workforce Commission are the people who will be offering those funds out into the community. And so what HAA has done, and what our website does at ready.haatx.com, is we create those resources for you. So Deidre was saying, talk to your friends about, which resources are right for you. We've done some of that for you. We don't have lists of 30 resources under each category. We have 4 or 5, maybe 10 if it's something we're really excited about. And so we take very seriously the recommendations that we give out. so that you as organizations and as independent artists can sort of cut through the noise to the things that are really important and that will help you. It's important to remember that even though we're artists and we are arts organizations and we're cultural organizations and historic preservation organizations, that we're also just people and businesses, and artists are small businesses. And so to remember that you are eligible for anything that you see that says it's for a person or for a business, and that money is for you, and you should apply for it, and you should look for those resources. And if you have any questions, there's a support desk on our website, and we try to answer it within 24 hours to help you navigate things.
Awesome, thank you. Mollie, what are some other organizations, programs, resources that artists, and if you want to make it particular to dancers, that's totally cool. What should they be looking into in general for support or checking up on?
So for dance specifically, Dance USA is the national service organization for dance. They are based in DC, and they have been providing almost daily, every other day, updates on their understanding of the CARES Act as more information becomes available. They are a huge advocate for the field of dance, and so they, in addition to providing information about funding opportunities, they also send out advocacy alerts. They are part of the Performing Arts Alliance. And so they consistently push out information to help folks in the dance field advocate for the field representatives. So that's a huge piece of this too, is that not only do we all need to be finding out what resources are available to access now, but continuing the advocacy work for the short term and long term in the future. And then the other organization I would recommend is the Actors Fund. And the Actors Fund, their tagline is the Actors Fund for everyone. The name sort of makes it sound like it's exclusive, but it is really an organization that exists to support anyone in the field of performing arts. Everybody from the lighting designer and sound technician to the musician or dancer on stage. And so they do have an emergency relief program that I know is really being maximized right now, because under normal circumstances, if it was an isolated situation, they would only be, receiving applications from one region or state. They do have offices based in New York, Chicago, and LA, but they exist to serve the entire country. And so in addition to having the emergency relief fund, they also have a program that supports artists who like to gain another skill, provide scholarships to help with that training or certification. That is also something for artists to look into, as well as ongoing webinars and workshops on tax information. And I know they have workshops planned on all of the federal programs as well, as that information becomes available.
Thank you. And kind of nearing the end of our discussion, just a bit more this line of questioning. Are there any updates or information you can share regarding your respective part of your organizations in terms of the normal programming? Like any updates, any shifts, any changes? For example, the grants program, information sessions, in regards to HAA, the public art program, your calendar. Any updates or any change in their status, or any information you could share regarding those with this context of the COVID-19 crisis. Deidre, if you want to start that off.
Yeah, so the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs just recently shared out communication about hot fluctuations, and there isn't a lot of information available right now, but through our office, we'll be communicating any changes with HOT as soon as we have information available. And then secondly, and one of the things I really want to stress is the SBA payment protection loan. There is a webinar available to help individuals and small nonprofits and large nonprofits that'll take place at 2 p.m. today. And so if you can register and attend that event, that way you are prepared and have the information that you need in order to apply for that resource. And that's one of the things that they shared in their communication on their Facebook page, and we'll also be resharing the communication from the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs through our newsletter directly to grant recipients, but then also with the disaster resources.
And then also the calendar. Could you maybe share any?
On the grant cycle launch, a lot of that, back to your question about how we're transitioning and how we're adapting to this new normal. There's a lot of planning going on behind the scenes in order to figure out how are we going to facilitate this grant cycle with these new kind of parameters. And so when we have a better handle on that, we'll be sending out information about the next grant cycle.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm referring to like the events calendar that people can upload there.
Okay, yeah. So digital events, we're taking all digital events. We don't want to encourage social gathering. So as grant recipients and then anyone who is an artist is putting out events that are digital arts and cultural experiences, we want them to share them on the cultural events calendar, and we'll be promoting those activities so people can enjoy arts and culture from a safe space. And that website is submit.haatx.com.
Thank you. Lauren, same question in regards to, is there any information regarding the normal programming that your department does? Their status, is something going to continue as normal? Is there something that's going to change in terms of that normal programming?
So this is my normal programming. My normal programming is planning for this. But what I can talk about is the Public Art Department just put out an RFQ, so a request for qualifications for civic art at the new Alief Neighborhood Center. And you can find out more about that at HoustonArtsAlliance.com. We are trying as hard as we can to put artists back to work and to keep them at work as much as possible. And then I would just like to stress again that we are we have a brand new grant that we are announcing today for everyone, which are for artists and arts workers at ready.haatx.com, that we are so excited about sharing with you all.
Thank you. And Mollie, same question. Any updates or information you want to share regarding DanceSource's regular programming? I know y'all do a really great newsletter.
Yeah, so we our resources page on our website generally lists, applications and auditions and jobs, and we're still accepting all of that information as people know it, is available or happening. Obviously, we also are not encouraging any gatherings, but we know that in this time, a lot of folks are shifting auditions to an online format, interviews to an online format. So any updates or adjustments to a current listing that folks may have, please send them our way. And any new events, please do send those. In our weekly newsletter, we usually send out 2 different communications each week, and we're combining everything into one so that at the top there's COVID-19 resources, similar to what Fresh Arts and HAA and other organizations are sharing, as well as some dance-specific information down below. And in terms of our our calendar, my team, we were on a call earlier this week, and our office is normally the upper part of our walls. We have big, like the giant poster size sticky notes with little sticky notes on them with our whole calendar year mapped out. And essentially, we don't know where any of the sticky notes are going now with all of this happening. But as we move forward, the first thing on our calendar coming up next is Barnstorm Dance Fest, which we are working to figure out a solution for. And so we will be communicating with that people. We will be communicating that with people very soon.
Awesome. So finally, our time is essentially up. Just wanted to give you a chance to share now any website, social media handles, links, anything that you would like for people to know or to check up on. We can start with, I know Deidre and Lauren, I'm sure you share many of the same links, but whoever wants to take on that first, anything in particular.
I mean, ready.haatx.com is where you can go to see our new grant, to see all of our resources, and to see the things that we are putting together as far as the CARES Act is concerned. That's really where I would send you. And then I don't actually know what our social media handles are, so I'm going to let Deidre take that.
You know, I should know them, but I don't. But I think our Instagram is Houston Arts Alliance, and our Facebook is just Houston Arts Alliance. And then for any opportunities that become available, such as the one that Lauren talked about with the civic art opportunity, all of that information can be found on our website, HoustonArtsAlliance.com. And then always sign up for our newsletter. Every bit of information that we push out always goes through our newsletter as well as landing on our website.
Yeah, Mollie, please. Any links, social media handles, anything?
Our website, sourcehouston.org, and there's a pop-up when you visit our homepage so that you can sign up for our newsletter as well. And then we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at DanceSource.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone for coming in and providing information for this discussion. Stay safe. I hope your organizations adjust as they need to. I hope you get all the blessings. I hope everything will be okay with you. So much. I'll see you around. People, please tune in to their resources. They're great members of the art community. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah. So there you have it. 3 individuals who are part of really amazing organizations that are doing great things within the Houston arts community. And so kind of moving forward, be sure to tune in next week, next Tuesday, for, again, another great lineup of individuals, another great discussion. In terms of what Fresh Arts is doing, please visit fresharts.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter. Every first Thursday, we provide a newsletter, one that is going out today, with things with COVID-19 specific resources, government assistance, but also just the normal in terms of what RFQs, requests for qualifications, submissions, call for entries, grants that are happening as normal, but also specifically towards the COVID-19 crisis. There on the screen, you'll see a form to kind of let us know anything in regards to what you're doing, what you think we should know, what you think we should discuss. And you can submit that to us in a link provided below. And again, just to kind of reiterate some of the other online resources we provide. So we have freshartsregistry.org, where you can create your own profile. You can have essentially like a web page dedicated to your craft, to your work. And I know in regards to Fresh Arts, a lot of resources we're moving to where you have to create one. So please, it's free, create a profile today. Sign up for our newsletters. Our Art on Tap newsletter is now providing events that are digital, anything that has turned into us. So again, we need you to kind of let us know what's happening so that we can share that with the larger community. And then finally, please stay tuned. You can visit our other videos if you haven't had a chance to tune into those. You can visit those videos, and again, a lot of that information still applies, even though everything changes every day. We make sure to curate these discussions to make sure to last beyond that day. So tune in. I just want to say thank you to the guests today, and I also want to thank the people behind the scenes here at Fresh Arts, particularly Angela Carranza, my colleague, who is setting up a lot of these discussions. I may be the face, but she is the brains. And so big thank you to her. Big thank you to all of the organizations that have staff that are working through this. So thank you for all that work. Thank you to everyone who is working together to create the best scenario possible, perhaps, within this current crisis. So thank you to everyone. And then as we move forward, I just want to give also another big thank you to Bend Productions. We are working with Ben Doyle to put on these really nice, pretty, sleek videos. So please be sure to check out his website. And again, I'll see you around. See you next time. Stay safe.